The Europeans have traveled with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to Washington, D.C. to have a conversation with the US President Donald Trump about Ukraine. Let's go back to last week, Friday. There was a meeting between President Trump of America and the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. The topic, Ukraine. Well, America said, although the conversation was fruitful, that no agreement was reached, and President Trump have been touting this idea of land swap. He said, look, if you guys want to continue fighting until the bitter end, there will be tens and hundreds of thousands of people dead. The Europeans are egging Ukraine on. They are egging Zelensky on to fight until the bitter end, that Ukraine should not give up 1 inch of land. And there are people egging him on, particularly from Europe, and giving him all this money and making him all these promises that they will continue to keep him in power in order to bleed Russia. Russia is also losing tens of thousands of soldiers every month. Thousands of soldiers every week, including civilians. But the Russians have gone deep too far to go back. The front line is now a stalemate, but the Russians are making significant advances in recent weeks and months, and the Europeans are calling for now a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. So they have traveled to Washington, D.C., and they're asking President Trump to put pressure on Vladimir Putin, to put pressure on the Russians for an immediate ceasefire. Well, Trump tried it before, it did not work. He said, well, he's going to put more pressure on the Russian president by threatening to impose additional sanctions on third countries buying oil from Russia, countries like India and China, and even other European countries. That clearly has not worked. And the Russians have stated clearly that there will be no ceasefire. They need a final solution to the problem. But the Europeans think they are smart. They think they are wise. They want to have this kind of frozen front line to keep Russia in some sort of abyss, to keep Russia guessing so that they can flood Ukraine with more weapons, to allow Ukraine to reorganize their troops so they can fight for another 10 years. They don't want it to look like it's some kind of victory for Russia, because whatever you think of these leaders in Europe, they are very weak. And this is why President Trump does not respect them. There are tens of thousands of US troops in Germany. There are thousands of US troops in Poland and all across Europe. Germany is the biggest economy in Europe. Look at what America have made Germany do to itself. They were buying cheap energy from Russia. The US told them to stop it, went in and blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline with the help of Ukraine. And Germany's economy now is a shit show. It's a mess. It used to be the largest economy in Europe. At some point, the German economy was bigger than the economy of China. I'm talking about less than 2 decades ago. And today, Germany is a shadow of itself. And the German Chancellor, Merz, have also been touting the idea of flooding Ukraine with a lot of weapons. In fact, he's at the forefront of advocating for more weapons to Ukraine, deploying German personnel on the ground so that he can look tough, so that he can appeal to his base of support at home. The level of Russophobia in Europe is crazy. It's crazy. Even the likes of Israel supporting Ukraine makes no sense to me. If you look at the history of Israel, not Israel, of the Jewish people, and what Ukraine did to the Jewish people, during the Second World War, the report is that between 1 million and 1,200,000 Jews were brutally massacred in Ukraine by neo-Nazis, the likes of which we see today. From the Azov battalion, the supporters of Banderas with swastika tattoo on their body, and Israel is sending arms to Ukraine. This doesn't make sense to me. It's the hypocrisy of these countries that call themselves the West. On one hand, supporting Ukraine, putting a lot of pressure on Russia, and on the other hand, allowing Israel to get a pass. It doesn't make sense. So Trump is saying, well, the idea of him again going back to forcing Putin to freeze the front line, to declare an immediate ceasefire as if the US president is the president of Russia, it's not going to happen. And the Europeans are adamant. They don't want any land swap. They don't want any kind of tactical victory or any kind of victory for Russia on the battlefield. And this is why they are urging Ukraine to fight until the bitter end. But the thing is that they are not sending their own sons and daughters to fight. They want Ukrainian sons and daughters to fight on their behalf until the last Ukrainian man standing.